A little bit about the seventh planet Mercury rising. If the Anunnaki created mankind, then who created them? Is there proof that the dark forces have been in control of US policy since 1945? What is their agenda? What is our destiny as a species? And how do we get back home to the light? Have we been abandoned by the gods? These are all pertinent questions addressed in the seventh planet Mercury rising book, and this book holds the keys to the multi-dimensional essential rules of the game of life. Receive the wisdom, as Gerald did, and a gift from the creator of all, and know that we shall meet again at the source in our new dimensional reality. Of course, you can check out today's author on his blog at geraldclark77.com, where you'll catch links to all his material and books. So without further ado, let's bring on today's guest. Hi Gerald, you're very welcome back to the show.
Hey James, it's really terrific to be back with you and continuing this series on my new book, The Seventh Planet.
Great to be doing it, Gerald. You know, it's like going to school, Gerald. I feel I'm getting lessons, and I get insights, and I get great perspective, and I get intelligent discussion, and you know, the dynamic is just wonderful, Gerald. I like that free flow of information backwards and forwards, and it's like my science and my engineering knowledge that's in there is getting ignited again, or reignited, and you know, it's come to fruition one more time in my mind.
Well, that's a desirable effect. I've noticed when I read this stuff to get ready for shows, it really gets me re-inspired. It helps me see my life in perspective a lot better. It's like a reminder of where we're going, and it settles you down a little bit. I really think it's wonderful.
Wow. Yeah, you know, and we are in the middle of the book. We're doing the Emerald Tablets, which is a chunk of the book, and you know, we'll get past these. We're coming up towards the end of them. Today we're going to talk about Emerald Tablets 12 and 13. The law of cause and effect and the key of prophecy, Gerald. There is a title if ever there was one. Cause and effect, causality, time, destiny, fate. We're going to get into all of this today, Gerald. How do we launch into this one, Gerald, the law of cause and effect?
Well, I mean, most of us, I guess we can start by playing a little bit with definitions and not going too hardcore to this. We have to keep it somewhat entertaining. If it's all educational,
sure,
we may lose a few people. So, you know, I think most of us understand the relationship of cause to effect, you know, especially as it relates to time. This is where it gets a little tricky, though, and that you do something and then it has some effect, a cause and effect. Well, the problem is if you implement a cause and you don't see the effect right away, sometimes you may be led to believe that whatever the cause was, it didn't have the effect that you thought it did because it took too long. And I'm referring back to the timetables that were shown in the Mayan calendar in the 9 rows and 13 columns, you recall. Well, the 9 rows were telescoping up toward the top, and the top row, with its division of 20, basically specified the limits of the day-night cycle, so you'd experience your thoughts in a 20-day period. So hopefully by that point, whatever your thinking was, you would see it created in the world, whether it's creative or just whether for good or for evil, and that you would basically take ownership and responsibility for being a co-creator with the creator of all. So this idea of cause and effect it really is scary for us, because that means everything in our lives, we caused it, whether we know it or not. And this is kind of incoincident with modern, some of it's new age, teachings about the law of attraction and the secret and those kind of things, that, you know, your thoughts are real things. And a lot of life coaches are now teaching people to manifest their reality based on their thought life. So it's another layer of responsibility when you start talking about cause and effect. And also cause and effect brings up the concept of time, which we did in Emerald Tablet 10, talking about it being a cymatic vibration, or a vibration that was eternal, issued by the creator of all, that essentially allowed a mechanism for distinguishing events. And I think the reason you would want events distinguishable is so that you could apply reflective consciousness, learn lessons, comparing and contrasting one event to another to determine, you know, what's different and what's the same, and is there resistance creating persistence, all that kind of stuff in your life lessons.
It also has the implication. Yeah, and also has the implications of karma, Gerald, and the grounding of notion of karma.
True, true. Like and we're jumping ahead a little bit, but he says if you want a more perfect cause or more perfect effect, then focus on sowing a more perfect cause. In other words, focus your energy on things that are going to produce what you want.
Mm.
You know, not war or strife or whatever. You know, he's saying focus on the things that are going to produce what you want. So that there's another thing that causes us to be responsible, is deciding what is it that we want that we have to focus on. And to have the belief that if we give it the mental energy and the emotion that go with it, that we can make it real. Well, that's part of the creation process, right? Visualizing something that doesn't exist and bringing it into fruition. And as engineers, you and I are well aware of that process. It's not just wishful thinking. It usually has stages of the preliminary design review, the functional requirements from the marketing department, making sure they all match, and then looking at that and determining is it buildable, or are we gonna have to go find some unobtainium to make it work? You know, so all of that stuff to make something come real. It's a process, and it's true with your thoughts as well. Now this part, so Thoth is teaching us about law of cause and effect, and he kind of blows your mind at a few places here as he's really exposing underneath the hood the concept of what you can know if this division of time were to be able to overcome. Now recall, he mentions that he overcame the laws of space-time, and he described it in the tablet in making a right-angled turn while he's out of his energy body that somehow averted this, what I believe is a cymatic vibration that gives him a way out. So I guess if you think about phase conjugation of waves and how the vibration might be oriented, maybe he knows something we don't. But he says make a right-angle turn, overcome time. So with that said, he encourages us that we could do and be and follow the same path that he had, and we can become one with the all, meaning the creator of all, that energy that spawns us all. So he oftentimes will encourage you, even though sometimes he talks about darkness being poured on your path and it's hard, but he also encourages you as well, kind of like a life coach. So here's the next thing he brings up, speaking of time. This is where you and I were talking before the show, how difficult it is to wrap your head around it. See, he says the future is declared to be known as an open book for those who can read, but he states the future is changeable, not fixed, but knowable. Now, how can that be? How could we as humans wrestle with that and say, wait, it's not fixed, it's changing, probably as a function of a response to the cause we do through our free will choice that then produces an effect. So how in the future, whatever we call the future, could you know what cause you would have implemented? This is like, you know, how would I know I was going to get married when I was 39 or whatever? You see what I'm saying? But he's saying the future is knowable but not fixed. So I guess it comes down to the definition of knowable. What does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Well, funny enough, I used to think about this stuff when I was a bit younger, Gerald, and my own conclusion was, due to a series of actual specific events that happened to me, I think there's these nodal points on a life journey. Whatever incarnation, whoever you are, you know, I think everybody has these nodal points that they have to be on this path. In other words, when you're 21, like you say, you got to be either getting married or something's going to happen to you, whatever, and whatever you do between the next nodal point, let's say your next nodal point is 27 or 20, so some major event happens to you when you're 27. Those 6 years, you can go off that path sideways or you can go straight to the 27. You know, it doesn't matter how much you meander along life's journey, but there are these future points in time that are going to be, that's the knowable stuff, you know, that you know you're going to have this event happen to you. However,
what you bring up is really, really interesting. Not to interrupt you, but before I lose this thought, what you just described is intermittent, unknowable fate, which allows you to choose at every instance in time, but at certain points, milestones, if you will, on the Gantt chart, these are fixed destiny marks that you either achieve or you're taken off the planet. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And I think
that might be the case because before we come into this incarnation as an avatar, I'm pretty sure we have some specific goals that get assigned to us to accomplish, whether we know what they are or not.
I kind of think
and
about,
because of that, I think you're right that there are certain milestones that we get vectored to. We don't know how we get there, whether it's a thought put in our head or whatever extreme circumstances. And it may not happen exactly at the time that it's supposed to, but it will happen at some phase that's very close. I've noticed that, and I think other people notice that too. Some people call it, I don't know, a form of synchronicity. And this is where it puts up the idea of, well, how much choice do we have in this fate and destiny holographic game that we're in? So ponder this. Suppose you figure out that you're in this game, you choose the right fated steps, and you get to those points more rapidly than you were supposed to. Is that possible? Or are those points fixed at points in your life where you can't achieve them until you've been on this planet that number of years? This is all very circumstantial stuff that doesn't really get talked about, but it's pertinent, you know?
I think you're right. I think there's like a tug of war going on, Gerald, and I think, personally, I just had things happen to me, Gerald, and I mean, it's stuff that was so specific and bizarre at the right moment, at the right time. And I looked around and I'm on my own and I'm looking up and I'm going, am I being tested here? Is this like, and I have these signs given to me and I mean, they're so ridiculous. I mean, I think the last major one I had was about 4 or 5 months ago. And I just scratch my head sometimes and I go, I'm on the right path, obviously, or else I wouldn't have been seeing this information at this moment in time. So that's like it's a checkpoint for me. However, right. I know I have my own free will to meander all between these points. And maybe you're right. Maybe before we check into this world for our life's journey, maybe we're given a set of conditions. Maybe we're given this soul, and you go, okay, the soul's journey. We got a journey coming up for the next person. You're going to be subjected to hate or jealousy or rejection, or you're going to have to deal with this as a major part of your life, or and maybe not a negative thing. Maybe you're going to get a good deal. Who knows? Maybe you're given a list of scenarios that are going to play out, and you get to ride the journey, the vehicle. Because I do think we're all in a vehicle, Gerald, and I think
well, I think what you just described means that, and this is the part where it gets really head trippy, is if you're going to be able to visit a future milestone that you've already lived, that means your whole life has to have already transpired, and that you're experiencing it through a sequence of segments that we call time, but it's already all occurred. That's the only way you could visit yourself in the future, and that it would be knowable but not fixed, meaning you chose whatever path you got to get there, but it's not fixed. Because you can still choose to change right up to the last minute.
I think
that means all the events have already taken place and are sitting in your event queue, and that you're just re-experiencing this as an avatar, but it's already been played out fully.
Mm. Yeah,
at least to some default state. That doesn't mean you can't come along and do your free will choices and change the state of it, because as you make your choices, it's going to change the state of the reality. The events. So that's really heavy to think about. And I know some movies that tried to do justice to this, but I've never really gotten my head fully around how you could have lived your whole life already, and that now you go through it sequentially in these time divisions to experience it. And see if you can't make it match the template, I suppose. Hey, Thoth talks about this cause and effect arising from this very first cause. And you remember he calls this... there was this void near the circle of light where this creator of all occupied, and then issued this first cause. He calls this law of time, and then there was the law of matter after that. Well, in this tablet, he's sending this cymatic vibration, and physics kind of also has an event they call the Big Bang Theory that goes back, a certain billion years. Some say 4.3, and actually the Mayan calendar goes back 16.4 billion. So pick your time frame. Mm-hmm. But the idea that time was built on the void, and then the law of matter was created such that matter could be part of distinguishable events. So actually the law of time looks like it came first. But this Big Bang Theory that came afterwards, it's a very interesting correlation with these discussions in the Emerald Tablets. Do you think they could be correlated? This first cymatic vibration that made a distinguish. I mean, if you're talking about distinguishable events, meaning you're separating matter, right? The heavens probably are being separated from the waters, you know, like the firmament above and below, that kind of thing. So I think the actions that Thoth is describing from the creator of all in setting up this hologram is coincident with what our scientists call the Big Bang Theory.
Wow. The fact that this stuff is in the Emerald tablets, Gerald, still, you know, the fact that this stuff that we talk about is in these tablets, Gerald, is mind blowing because it's very modern.
I know, it is mind blowing.
It's very modern.
When you dig into what the Mayans knew about astronomy and such, the knowing that this guy taught them the same thing, and his role in Egypt, all the writings he did in Egypt. I haven't even read all of his writings from Egypt, Thoth's writings, and there's a plethora of them. And I'd like to, you know, that you could spend a lifetime reading what this being wrote. So anyway, so cause and effect and destiny. You know, I want to go back to the Atrahasis a little bit in Enki's creation of the first Adapa. You know, Zechariah Sitchin wrote in his Lost Book of Enki, whether people believe it's true or not, it doesn't matter. He still wrote it. Mm-hmm. And in there, he discussed some of the consequences of creating a primitive worker in terms of fate and destiny. And these were really deep questions. And I know we've already got kind of deep, and I won't rehash that, but I want people to think about that. This being wrestled very deeply with our connection to the holographic reality, what he had done. I mean, it was a very complicated thing, more so than just, oh, here, let's mix some blood and clay, which isn't a symbolic thing for what the geneticists did. And then just leave them on their own and see what happens. And that's, a lot of people believe that we've been abandoned and that there's no guidance for us here. And I think that's incorrect. So, what are your thoughts on that? I know you.
Yeah, you know,
you've got drawn into these tablets pretty deep, but
the abandonment.
That not only is he inspiring people to do this, but even though he's asleep in the halls of Amenti, or what he calls sleeping, that his spirit is with you always. Just like what Jesus said, right?
On the abandonment issue, I mean, it's like this, Gerald. You know, take a bird flying off the cliff for the first time. Can you say that the parents abandoned it to go, or did it go off and find its own journey? You know, the same as humans. You know, do we say we abandon our children at the age of 16 and let them go off into the world to work? No, they're just going off to you know.
You bring up a very good point. I was thinking about that and watching nature. I'm a big fan of nature. I like to study it. I'm surprised I didn't turn out to be a naturalist, but I was watching reptiles. You know, when a reptile is born, depending on which ones, like lizards and snakes, well, they're born from an egg that the mother lays in a small nest and then usually leaves. They don't occupy the nest. They make sure it's the right temperature for the eggs to incubate, just like alligators do. But they don't like there's no real nurturing. You know, they crack out of the egg, and turtles are the same way, and they've got to have everything together so they can survive right then and there. There's no break-in period for learning how to walk or talk or eat or look at a human baby. It's incapable of communication, incapable of walking, incapable really of feeding itself, incapable of pretty much anything for a very long time. Now, and then compare and contrast that with the brilliance of the creatures in nature. I mean, even a baby calf can walk the same day it's born. So, you know, so it's kind of incredible, all the nurturing that a human requires just to function. It's like we're a complete alien species on this planet. We couldn't, if we did what nature did and had our kids and walked away, we'd all be dead. Wouldn't make it at all. Well, maybe we'd adapt somehow, but I doubt it.
Wow. Yeah, in that respect, though, an abandonment thing, I mean, I think we're just doing our thing. I think we're all just doing our thing at the moment, you know. Big deal if we were abandoned, you know. the job. Maybe the job was done. Maybe the job was done, and it's time for her to find her own feet. It's really besides the point.
Well, Thoth kind of brings this point up in in this particular tablet, and he's talking to the future generation, even though he's really talking to the people there in the land of Chem as well. And he says we're warned that most will forget the knowledge of the gods, and then the future, because of our knowledge base, we will be gods to others. Now, imagine you forget the knowledge of what Thoth is giving you, right? You don't know about this. You become very knowledgeable in this technocratic society that is very self-serving, and that you encounter an indigenous population either by accident or you got marooned on an island or something. Maybe it was a portion of a primitive part of New Guinea, for instance, and you had your knowledge and were stuck there with them. Now you would effectively be a god to them, depending on your knowledge base. But that's no different than what he's saying that happened to him, because he's saying, remember, people, you were essentially barbarians living in caves in the land of Cam when I showed up. So don't forget this knowledge of the gods that we're giving to you, because when it comes your turn to be one of those, guess what? You could either be a righteous one or a fallen one that's serving the dark forces. So figure out which side you're on. So, and then shortly thereafter that, because of that warning, he describes the Dark Brothers, and we talked about them some time ago in the Emerald Tablets, especially right when Thoth was sent out of Atlantis after the destruction of Atlantis to go to the land of Cam, or Egypt. Recall that these Dark Brothers were the reason that issue came about. Okay. They were messing with dark forces through a portal that they shouldn't have been open to, probably entities from another dimension. The dweller of Atlantis found out about it. Excuse me. And he went to the seven lords in the halls of Mementi to change Earth's balance and cause a flood to close their portal, and it also destroyed Atlantis. Now keep that in mind, okay? Because guess what? That shows up again. As a matter of fact, it shows up in this tablet. He says the Dark Brothers initiate a terrible great war between the light and the night, altering Earth's course. Hear that? Altering Earth's course, changing its pole, probably the rotational axis, to cause calamities. Wow. And when they do this, it's going to cause earthquakes and trembling. And it's predicted to occur when man has learned to conquer global transportation via sea and air. And, excuse me, he has scientifically progressed to the point where he has the power of lightning, meaning, very large destructive weapons like nuclear weapons. Well, guess what? We've arrived at that point, and the war is underway. Take a look at what's happening in Ukraine. As of this week, the United States, instead of trying to work with the second Minsk peace agreement to bring peace to that area, they're signing a deal with Poroshenko to fully arm him and cause more consternation and war. They want this war, and they're the cause of it. And I'm just going to say it right now. All the evidence is that, the United States, probably in cooperation with Russia, through this holographic manipulation from entities that are higher than both of them, are going to drive it to a war. Now, the reason I bring that up is he says that, half the humans are going to die in this war. Now, think about the Illuminati goals on the Georgia Guidestones, right? They predict massive destruction up to everybody being gone but 500 million. So there was something I wanted to share with you about this war.
Wasn't there an update on the Georgia Guidestones?
Pardon?
Wasn't there an update on the Georgia Guidestones recently?
Yeah. There was a cube that was installed in 2014 that probably was some sort of milestone to indicate something had happened. There was attention brought to it very bizarrely, they took the stone out of the place it had been put and broke it on the floor and gave pieces away to people that were there at the time. I thought that was just bizarre. And that was also probably very symbolic. Wow. Very strange thing to do, don't you think?
It's incredible.
Yeah, very strange, very strange. So, let's ponder something for a minute. How do you think somebody could bring change to the orbital tilt angle of our Earth without bashing an asteroid or meteoroid into the Earth and causing gravity? How could that be done? Think about that.
I'm thinking solar particles filling the poles with the aurora borealis tipping the magnetic sphere.
There's several ways. You could potentially drag something close to the Earth, close to the Sun, cause a magnetic or a electromagnetic, including radiation, interaction between the two planets. Maybe you could do that by changing the Earth's magnetic field, for instance, allowing that solar radiation to come in, and changing the attractive force of the magnetism of the Earth to the Sun, causing its pole to shift. Because the magnetic pole in the Sun varies, which could, if it was exposed to the Earth in a significant way, cause it to vary as well. Meaning, you got two magnets pulling on each other. So that could cause it. Now, think about this. What if you had something that could produce more magnetism than the Earth itself along a different axis? What do you think that would do interacting with the Sun, which is a big magnet to us? And I want you to think about the capabilities of CERN, because CERN has that capability to produce that kind of magnetic field. So, I've always wondered about, are we really bashing particles together to see if we can get back to reverse engineering, destructive reverse engineering to the Big Bang itself, instead of going forward from what Thoth is telling you here and learning it from a scientific standpoint of how light gets turned into matter. That's really the mystery, not how to break them. And they're trying to do essentially the same thing by breaking it apart. But I think it could be done another way. Because the way they're doing it is very, very dangerous. Think about that. I mean, it's like replicating the beginning of our material simulator, and you could basically cause a reset if you did it big enough.
Oh yeah, I mean, it'd be like slapping a spinning top with your hand when it's in motion and just sent it flying. You would just knock it into you discombobulate it like.
Yeah. Well, luckily, the good news is, he says, even though all this darkness is going to be poured on our path, that we're ultimately going to merge into our form of light. But in the meantime, these weapons of force that the dark forces are bringing to bear are probably going to wipe out half the Earth's humans. And at that point, Thoth says the sons of the morning are going to intervene in the war. And basically, they're going to pose the question that, look, how much longer are you going to strive against each other? And then based on how they reveal themselves, he goes forward and says, well, you're going to enter a new age, and the exposure to them halts the war and causes Atlantis to re-rise, and all men start seeking the gold under their leadership. So I'm like, wow, really? He also tells us that eventually, in our path, our bodies and our spirits are not bound to one planet. That eventually, we'll be in our new home in the stars, in a different dimension. So that's kind of a strange thing to think about our fate. And then at the end of this tablet, he heads back to the halls of Amente, says he's waiting for this coming future age of light, encouraging us to keep seeking it. And something kind of strange he did in this tablet. At the opening of the tablet and the closing, he gives you 3 names to call him by in case you need his help. And it's kind of strange. These are names that don't show up in my genealogy table, but they must come from some historical precedence that he's using for it. And he says, "Call thou on me when thou dost need me. Use my name 3 times in a row. Sheketek, Aralek, and Volmalites." And it's like, wow, those kind of names are kind of like the names that show up in the Lords of the Nine Cycles, if you look at them. But what's trippy to me is they look almost like Latin American names, right? But at the same time, he's saying, "Call thou on me." I mean, this is like the old English, right?
Yeah.
Thee and thou, and do you think that that was an Atlantean way of speaking before it ever landed in the old English language? It sure looks like it, because here it is in the tablet.
Ironically enough, when we speak in Irish, we actually translate it into what people think it's supposed to be, but it's a very archaic way of speaking. Basically, we say there is hunger upon me, or there is sadness upon me, there's happiness upon me. We don't actually say I'm happy. We don't say I'm happy, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. We say there is thirst upon me, and everything's like that. It's the way you pronounce. It's like everything you're doing is pronouncing yourself, Gerald.
Yeah, German does the same thing. Es ist mich sehr kalt. It's to me cold. Like you said, you're an indirect object. Anyway, I think that's all I had on this tablet, the law of cause and effect. Maybe we can go ahead and play out the tablet and then do the next one after a break. What do you say?
Sure, yeah. I mean, just on the war thing, Gerald, there is, if we are going into this war, and war is destiny, I just think people need to be conscientious about this stuff, Gerald. I think people need to be aware of what's going on. It's not just a couple of countries flexing their muscles, Gerald. We're going at this present modern situation of global war. And most of the people on this planet do not understand the motives behind it. Most of the people on this planet don't understand it in any way, or nor do they want to, Gerald. They're just ignoring it. They don't see what's really going on behind the scenes. There's layers of what's going on behind the scenes.
I know. I actually wrote in my, I think it's the 10th or 11th chapter. I wrote something about what Albert Pike said in 1871. It's actually chapter 8, okay, on page 450. It's about 455. And I have my very first edition here, so it's not the one that's released, but it's approximately there. And it was talking about these 3 wars that these Illuminati were going to bring to bear. Now, I want you to listen to this inside this letter. Mm-hmm. That was written to Mancini by Albert Pike, Giuseppe Mazzini, in 1805 to 1872. That's when he lived. He was a 33rd degree Mason. Okay, so then this letter, down toward the bottom of the letter, it talks about the First World War, what its goals were, and what these guys wanted to accomplish. The Second World War, what its goals were, and then it jumps down on the bottom of the page, says, readers who argue that the terms Nazism and Zionism were not known in 1871 should remember that the Illuminati invented both these movements. So the idea that this is new, it's not, okay? So in this Third World War, and the only reason I give this credence from Albert Pike is because what he said about the first one and the second one went down just like he said. I mean, just like he said. So I was going to give you a little snippet from this third one so that you know what the goals of this war are without going into too much detail, but this is verbatim from his letter. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arab world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origins of savagery, and the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere, the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. Okay, and I won't go any farther than that, but let me tell you, the goals of the First World War, the Second World War that he laid out, they happened just like he said. So what he's saying is they're going to destroy atheism, they're going to destroy Christianity, they're going to destroy Judaism and Islam. All four, if you consider atheism a religion. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, this is very disturbing to everybody who's a part of all that, right? Well, think about this. Think about this from an ancient alien standpoint that sees religion probably as the basis for why we have our strife against each other. So they, of course, would want that eliminated. Would they not? Especially if they knew the reality and the truth of a creator of all, and all this other stuff is made up for manipulation and control. They know that. So from that standpoint, looking at it from an alien view, I kind of see where they're at. And then here's the next awful question to ask yourself once you realize what's going on is how many biological entities can a particular planet support based on oxygen, food, resources, waste management, blah, 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 the whole thing. What is the ideal number? Is there such a thing? Obviously, there has to be some cutoff at some point because there's only so much surface area. Of course, we're not even close to covering that, but there's a number. How do you come up with that? Well, these ancient aliens seem to have come up with a number that ended up, in my opinion, being fed to the Illuminati and now is shown up on the Georgia Guidestones as 500 million people. Did they arbitrarily just pick that number? Possibly. But you start to see that these agent provocateurs and these governments around the world that have basically signed up to this Luciferian agenda to implement that will. And that included Nazism and Zionism and capitalism and all the other ones that they invented as well, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, all these social experiments in how to manage your slaves, they've all been played out. And the Illuminati were clearly part of playing out the different models for people to look at, which I think in and of itself is kind of a head trip. But it's happening right before our eyes, just like he said in that letter.
For sure. They are harrowing times, Gerald, but like I say, at least people should be going into this conscientious of what's happening in their own cause and effect in their own life and in cause and effect of the world and global scenes as they're getting played out. A lot of people, and I know you mentioned this earlier about the Gog-Magog comparison to, the end times of the world. It's been brought into the end time philosophy of our modern world as a parallel. It's
well, think about this. If you had the ability, if you were an extra-dimensional being, you're not tied down to going through time the way everyone else is. So you could see from, so what's a zodiacal house being able to see 2,160 years? That's nothing, right? So here we have some terrible prophecies about destruction, blah, 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 and this new kingdom that's going to come in under this new world order, right, or whatever. And you got these agent provocateurs of the Illuminati that are put into power positions to actually make those prophecies come true. Oh yeah, Damascus is supposed to be blown up. Well, get those guys in the tunnel over there and get their TNT to them. It's disgusting. It's really disgusting to see these destroyers of civilization being turned loose to do just what the desire was of whoever issued these prophecies in the first place. And I think you and I both knew who that was.
Well, Gerald, I'm going to play out the tablet, tablet number 12, the law of cause and effect and the key of the prophecy. But we'll be back in the second half of the show. We're going to talk about Emerald Tablet 13, the keys of life and death.
Yeah, this is a really good one, so we're going to get revved up for that one.
Call thou on me when thou dost need me. Use my name 3 times in a row. Sheketet, Aralek, Volmalites. List ye, O man, to the words of my wisdom. List to the voice of Thoth the Atlantean. Conquered have I the law of space-time. Knowledge have I gained of the future of time. Know I that man in his movement, though space-time shall ever be one with the all. Know ye, O man, that all of the future is an open book to him who can read. All effects shall bring forth its causes, as effects grew from the first cause. Know ye the future is not fixed, or stable, but varies as cause brings forth an effect. Look in the cause thou shalt bring into being, and surely thou shalt see that all is effect. So, O man, be sure the effects that ye bring forth are ever causes of more perfect effects. Know ye the future is never in fixation, but follow man's free will as it moves through the movements of time, space, toward the goal where a new time begins. Man can only read the future through the causes that bring the effects. Seek ye within the causation, and surely you shall find the effects. List ye, O man, while I speak of the future. Speak of the effect that follows the cause. Know ye that man is in his journey lightward, is ever seeking escape from the night that surrounds him, like the shadows that surround the stars in the sky, and like the stars in the sky of space, he too shall shine from the shadows of night. Ever his destiny shall lead him onward, until he is one with the light. Aye, though his way lies midst the shadows, ever before him glows the great light. Dark though the way be, yet shall he conquer the shadows that flow around him like night. Far in the future I see man as light-born, free from the darkness that fetters the soul, living in light without the bounds of the darkness, to cover the light that is light of their soul. Know ye, O man, before ye attain this, that many the dark shadows shall fall at your light, striving to quench with the shadows of darkness the light of the soul that strives to be free. Great is the struggle between light and darkness, age-old and yet ever new. Yet know in a time far in the future, light shall be all, and darkness shall fall. List ye, O man, to my words of wisdom. Prepare, and ye shall not bind your light. Man has risen, and man has fallen, as ever new. Waves of consciousness flow from the great abyss below us toward the sun of their goal. Ye, my children, have risen from a state that was little above the beast, until now of all men ye are greatest. Yet before thee were others greater than thee. Yet tell I thee, as before thee others have fallen, so also shall ye come to an end. And upon the land where ye dwell now, barbarians shall dwell, and in turn rise to light. Forgotten shall be the ancient wisdom, yet ever shall live through the hidden from men. I in the land thou callest Chem, races shall rise and races shall fall. Forgotten shall be the children of men, yet thou shalt have moved to a star space, beyond this, leaving behind this place where thou hast dwelt. The soul of man moves ever onward, bound not by any one star, but ever moving to the great goal before him, where he is dissolved in the light of the all. Know ye that ye shall ever go onward, moved by the law of cause and effect, until the end both become one. Aye, man, after ye have gone, others shall move in the places ye lived. Knowledge and wisdom shall all be forgotten, and only a memory of God shall survive. As I to thee am a god by my knowledge, so ye too shall be gods of the future. Because of your knowledge far above theirs, ye know ye that all through the ages man shall have access to law when he will. Ages to come shall see revival of wisdom to those who shall inherit thy place on this star. They shall in turn come into wisdom and learn to banish the darkness by light. Yet greatly must they strive through the ages to bring unto themselves the freedom of light. Then shall there come unto man the great warfare that shall make the earth tremble and shake in its course. Aye, then shall the dark brothers open the warfare between light and the night. When man again shall conquer the ocean and fly in the air on wings like the birds, When he has learned to harness the lightning, then shall the time of warfare begin. Great shall the battle betwixt the forces, great the warfare of darkness and light. Nation shall rise against nation, using the dark forces to shatter the earth. Weapons of force shall wipe out the earthman until half of the races of men shall be gone. Then shall come forth the sons of the morning, and give their edict to the children of men, saying, O men, cease from thy striving against thy brother. Only thus can ye come into the light. Cease from thy unbelief, O my brother, and follow the path, and ye know ye are right. Then shall men cease from their striving, brother against brother, and father against son. Then shall the ancient home of my people rise from its place beneath the dark ocean waves. Then shall the age of light be unfolded, with all men seeking the light of the goal. Then shall the brothers of light rule the people. Banished shall be the darkness of night. I, the children of men, shall progress, onward and upward to the great goal. Children of light shall they become. Flame of the flame shall their souls ever be. Knowledge and wisdom shall be man's. In the great age, for he shall approach the eternal flame, the source of all wisdom, the place of beginning, that is yet one with the end of all things. I, in a time that is yet unborn, all shall be one, and one shall be all. Man, a perfect flame of this cosmos, shall move forward to a place in the stars. I shall move even from out of this space-time into another beyond the stars. Long have ye listened to me, O my children, long have ye listened to the wisdom of Thoth. Now I depart from ye into darkness, now I go to the halls of Amenti, there to dwell in the future when light shall come again to man. Yet know ye my spirit shall ever be with thee, guiding thy feet in the pathway of light. Guard ye the secrets I leave with thee, and surely my spirit will guard thee through life. Keep thine eyes ever on the pathway to wisdom, keep the light as thy goal evermore. Fetter not thy soul in bondage of darkness, free let it wing in its flight to the stars. Now I depart thee to dwell in Amenti, be thou my children in this life and the next. The time will come when ye too shall be deathless, living from age to age, a light among men. Guard ye the entrance to the halls of Amenti, guard ye the secrets I have hidden among ye. Let not the wisdom be cast to barbarians, secret shalt thou keep it for those who seek light. Now depart I, receive thou my blessing, take thou my way, and follow the light. Blend thou my soul in the great essence, one with the great light let thy consciousness be. Call thou on me when thou dost need me, use my name 3 times in a row. Shaketet, Aralik, Volmalites.
I mean, is there resistance creating persistence? All that kind of stuff in your life lessons.
It also has
So
the
that's kind
it
Go
also
ahead.
yeah, it also has the implications of karma, Gerald, and the grounding of notion of karma.
True. Like and we're jumping ahead a little bit, but he says if you want a more perfect cause or more perfect effect, then focus on sowing a more perfect cause. In other words, focus your energy on things that are going to produce what you want.
Mm.
You know, not war or strife or whatever. You know, he's saying focus on the things that are going to produce what you want. So that there's another thing that causes us to be responsible is deciding what is it that we want that we have to focus on. And to have the belief that if we give it the mental energy and the emotion that go with it, that we can make it real. Well, that's part of the creation process, right? Visualizing something that doesn't exist and bringing it into fruition. And as engineers, you and I are well aware of that process. It's not just wishful thinking. It usually has stages of the preliminary design review,
Oh yeah.
the functional requirements from the marketing department, making sure they all match, and then looking at that and determining is it buildable or is it are we gonna have to go find some unobtainium to make it work? You know, so all of that your thinking was you would see it created in the world, whether it's creative or just whether for good or for evil, and that you would basically take ownership and responsibility for being a co-creator with the creator of all. So this idea of cause and effect it really is scary for us because that means everything in our lives we caused it, whether we know it or not. And this is kind of coincident with modern, some of it's New Age, teachings about the law of attraction and the secret and those kind of things that, your thoughts are real things. And a lot of life coaches are now teaching people to manifest their reality based on their thought life. So it's another layer of responsibility when you start talking about cause and effect. And also cause and effect brings up the concept of time, which we did in Emerald Tablet 10, talking about it being a cymatic vibration, or a vibration that was eternal, issued by the creator of all, that essentially allowed a mechanism for distinguishing events. And I think the reason you would want events distinguishable is so that you could apply reflective consciousness, learn lessons, comparing and contrasting one event to another to determine, what's different and what's the same.
A little bit about the seventh planet Mercury rising. If the Anunnaki created mankind, then who created them? Is there proof that the dark forces have been in control of US policy since 1945? What is their agenda? What is our destiny as a species? And how do we get back home to the light? Have we been abandoned by the gods? These are all pertinent questions addressed in the seventh planet Mercury rising book, and this book holds the keys to the multi-dimensional essential rules of the game of life. Receive the wisdom, as Gerald did, and a gift from the creator of all, and know that we shall meet again at the source in our new dimensional reality. Of course, you can check out today's author on his blog at geraldclark77.com, where you'll catch links to all his material and books. So without further ado, let's bring on today's guest. Hi Gerald, you're very welcome back to the show.
Hey James, it's really terrific to be back with you and continuing this series on my new book, The Seventh Planet.
Great to be doing it, Gerald. It's like going to school, Gerald. I feel I'm getting lessons, and I get insights, and I get great perspective, and I get intelligent discussion, and the dynamic is just wonderful, Gerald. I like that free flow of information backwards and forwards, and it's like my science and my engineering knowledge that's in there is getting ignited again, or reignited, and it's come to fruition one more time in my mind.
Well, that's a desirable effect. I've noticed when I read this stuff to get ready for shows, it really gets me re-inspired. It helps me see my life in perspective a lot better. It's like a reminder of where we're going, and it settles you down a little bit. I really think it's wonderful.
Wow. Yeah, and we are in the middle of the book. We're doing the Emerald Tablets, which is a chunk of the book, and we'll get past these. We're coming up towards the end of them. Today we're going to talk about Emerald Tablets 12 and 13. The law of cause and effect and the key of prophecy, Gerald. There is a title if ever there was one. Cause and effect, causality, time, destiny, fate. We're going to get into all of this today, Gerald. How do we launch into this one, Gerald, the law of cause and effect?
Well, I mean, most of us, I guess we can start by playing a little bit with definitions and not going too hardcore to this. We have to keep it somewhat entertaining. If it's all educational,
sure.
We may lose a few people. So, I think most of us understand the relationship of cause to effect, especially as it relates to time. This is where it gets a little tricky, though, and that you do something and then it has some effect, a cause and effect. Well, the problem is if you implement a cause and you don't see the effect right away, sometimes you may be led to believe that whatever the cause was, it didn't have the effect that you thought it did because it took too long. And I'm referring back to the timetables that were shown in the Mayan calendar in the 9 rows and 13 columns, you recall. Well, the 9 rows were telescoping up toward the top, and the top row, with its division of 20, basically specified the limits of the day-night cycle, so you'd experience your thoughts in a 20-day period. So hopefully by that point, whatever